It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, live from the Syrian capital, Damascus. Unearthing the secrets of the Assad regime, we go inside a hospital as desperate people search through body bags for the murdered.
Coming to morgues where they know people who have been tortured to death, their bodies have been found here and identified.
Their fears are unnecessary. God willing, the country will be rebuilt.
A Syrian rebel leader tells Sky News that Western fears are unnecessary, promising to rebuild the country. And Israel destroys the Syrian Navy fleet, it says, to eliminate strategic threats.
Also tonight on Sky News at 10.
And it's completely out of touch. And it's not the intelligence of the American people.
The alleged killer of a U.S. health insurance boss shouts at reporters outside the Pennsylvania courthouse where he's been denied bail. Social care in crisis. A family demands answers after an autistic man wanders from his carer. And a sneak peek at the Saudi Arabia World Cup set to be officially announced tomorrow. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight.
Good evening, live from Damascus, the capital of Syria. Well, life here has changed dramatically over the last 72 hours since the fall of the Assad regime. Today, we found a mixture of celebration and relief. There is now an interim Prime Minister, Mohammed al-Bashir, as the rebel groups try to restore order and create a transitional government. Today, the rebel leader, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, told Sky News the international community has nothing to fear from the opposition takeover of Syria. But we start our coverage tonight here in the capital and a hospital where the secrets of Assad's campaign of murder are emerging. Our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, has been at Al-Mujtahid Hospital. A warning, Stuart's report, has images of people dead in body bags.
From the gloomy interior of a morgue's refrigeration room, a body is wheeled on a gurney towards the examination area. They're trying to identify who the dead man is. All they know is that he has been murdered. The dead here are all victims of Bashar al-Assad's regime. Across Damascus, there's a desperate search for the missing. There's no authority. So distraught family members are searching the morgues themselves. They open body bags to take pictures of the victims, trying to work out if they are relatives. Beside them, the refrigerator door has been opened. Stacked inside, over 30 people. Assigned a number. The identity mark of the unclaimed dead. The unknown victims. Nearby, they open refrigerated lockers looking for bodies, praying they would at least find who they have lost, often for over a decade. And perhaps for them, final closure at last.
The people, this is happening all over the city. They're coming to morgues where they know people who have been tortured to death. Their bodies have been found here and identified. Some have only seen their loved ones on social media. They've seen the pictures, so they're coming here to see if they can collect the body.
When the bodies are identified, the families can take them away. The dead sometimes placed on the knees of family waiting in their car. It is absolutely chaotic. The people are desperate for news, any news. People struggle to get inside to catch a glimpse of the dead. It is, simply put, desperate stuff.
We began our work last night. From the moment the bodies arrived at the hospital, they were identified, numbered, and photographed for initial identification.
These are specialists at identifying bodies. They're trying to work in the midst of this mayhem.
This this is going to be a painstaking process. They're actually from the health ministry, the old regime health ministry. They say they are the health ministry and this is their job now, is to identify people. Now, these people have all been killed in prison. This is a process of trying to find out their identities and link them with the family.
For some, the news they had dreaded hearing. The extended family of Mazin Hamada gathering in grief. Mazin was a prominent, even famous anti-regime activist, who they said had escaped to Germany but was persuaded to return by the Syrian government with an amnesty. But he was arrested, and as they've just been told, he was murdered in captivity.
So you're saying is that this was a conspiracy to bring him back and to kill him?
A gang brought him here. They said they wouldn't do him any harm. It was all lies. They handed him over to the regime.
With so many dead, so many missing, trying to find and identify everyone is going to be a Herculean task. For the families, it's become a full-on preoccupation.
So you've not seen him for 12 years?
أبداً, no, never. 12 years ولا سمعنا صوته على التليفون. No telephone, no.
And you're trying to find him, yeah?
The detention and murder of anyone even remotely opposed to the Assad regime appears to have been conducted on an industrial scale. It's been known about for years, but this is absolute proof if it was needed. Barely a family is untouched, and it's clear the killing continued to the very end. Hurriedly rushed to a waiting car by his family, Ahmed al-Khatib, they say, was arrested 24 hours before the regime fell. He was one of the last to die. There were hundreds of thousands before him. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Damascus.
And we'll be speaking to Stuart in a moment, but let's just take a closer look at the complexities of what is happening here in this country. Well, groups inside and out are competing for influence. Rebel forces, the HTS, have successfully taken the strip highlighted in green and the cities within it. Syrian Democratic Forces in yellow, a largely Kurdish group controlling areas in the north, have their own desire for statehood. Turkish-backed militias known as the Syrian National Army also control some northern areas. There are other smaller groups vying for territory in the south, as well as international interests. Among them, Israel, which has carried out hundreds of strikes in Syria since the fall of the regime, military bases, as well as various other areas are being targeted at the moment. Southwest of Damascus, the Akbar air base was hit, as well as a centre for electronic warfare near the Sayyid Zainab area of the capital, and the Barza Scientific Research Centre, which has been linked to chemical weapons production. The IDF is operating inside Syria in the demilitarized buffer zone, which Israel's military seized in the Golan Heights in the last few days, although Israel has denied reports that their tanks were moving towards Damascus. We'll get more on that from our international correspondent in a moment. But now, a new governing structure needs to be formed. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, reports on what comes next.
He is the man behind Syria's revolution, a hero to his people for toppling their tyrant. But how will the world now respond to Mohammed Jilani's stunning victory? Speaking to the foreign media for the first time, exclusively to Sky News, he sent this message to the outside powers, including the West.
Their fears are unnecessary. God willing, the country will be rebuilt. The fear was from the presence of the regime. The country is moving towards development and reconstruction. It's going towards stability. People are exhausted from war, so the country isn't ready for another one.
Jilani is being worshipped here like a celebrity, the man of the moment, promising a new future for his country.
Everyone talked about a new Middle East, but we were the ones who actually made it happen, for our own benefit and for the good of Syria.
In the Grand Bazaar in Damascus, they're still singing songs cursing Syria's fallen leader Bashar al-Assad. The challenges for the country's new rulers are enormous. Father of two, Osama, has this dream for his children.
We want the new generation to live in dignity and in freedom, not like us. We were either tortured or imprisoned, and some of us were forced to be in the army and they never came back.
A young mother nearby told us the new government must make life affordable again.
We're hoping for the new government to make things cheaper, especially products for babies and pregnant mothers. Our life has been difficult.
The city's awash with rebel fighters. For some onlookers, there is a nervousness about what comes next, especially, says storekeeper Mohammed, among Syria's many different religious groups.
Yes, there are fears, especially among minorities. To be quite honest, some people have fears. My friend is a Shia, and he called and said he wants to leave this place, and I told him to calm down.
They're painting over the old flag with the colours of the revolution and watching closely to see what kind of country it will bring. Rebel commanders are now ordering their fighters to withdraw from Syria's cities. How they respond could be a key test for the revolution as it tries to transform itself from armed rebellion into a viable new government for Syria. Outside this world-famous Damascus ice cream restaurant, rebels savour their victory. The discipline that helped them win suggests they may follow orders now.
We as soldiers will go back to our original positions and the security forces, the police, will take over. There is no terrorism in this country.
But we are only 3 days into Syria's brave new world. Their country has been a pariah for so long. They know only too well the challenges they face. After all they've been through, they now have hope. So much hangs on their leaders, winning support from the outside world. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Damascus.
The Israeli military has seized a buffer zone between Syria and Israel. Israel and Turkey have also destroyed Syrian military assets, including a naval base. Well, Kurdish-controlled areas of northeastern Syria were one of the many regions bombarded by airstrikes overnight and into today. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi reports from the scene of one attack.
As fears spread about what could happen inside Syria after the fall of Assad, outside powers are trying to shape the future. And this is what that looks like on the road to Hasaka. Destroyed ammunition from a weapons convoy is strewn all around. The trucks were hit by airstrikes late at night as they left a regime base. Secondary explosions lit up the sky as ordnance streaked across the horizon. Turkey's official news agency says this attack was carried out by the country's warplanes. Ankara does not want weapons falling into the hands of Kurdish groups. It worries they may be funneled to separatists inside Turkey. The driver of one of the vehicles only just escaped. Mohammed tells me he saw the first explosion and ran for cover. He thought he was part of a convoy transporting army rations. He says he's frightened about what's happening in Syria.
I don't know what to say about things here. People are desperate and miserable. All the people are having trouble. I'm lost for words.
Other regional players are also pursuing their own goals. The Israeli military's conducted strikes against Syria's navy. It appears that most of its fleet has been taken out in the port city of Latakia. IDF forces are also moving into the buffer zone on the Israel-Syria border, casting it as an act of self-defense. But this is viewed by Syrians as an opportunistic land grab. There is now great nervousness across the country. The revolution is not tied to a single group. Each has its own agenda. We visit an abandoned government army camp. It's now been taken over by Kurdish fighters from the Syrian Democratic Forces. The soldiers here fled in a hurry before melting into the civilian population.
It is strange walking around what was until just a few days ago a regime military base. Now, these places are slowly being secured by the different groups that have taken over the country, but you can see around here just abandoned trucks and supplies, and of course in here, ammunition. And the fear is that in the chaos and lawlessness of this revolution, it will fall into the wrong hands.
In Syria, there are now so many factions jostling for position. The worry is the collapse of the Assad dynasty may not turn out to be a victory for freedom, but rather the start of another bloody civil war. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Northeast Syria.
Well, let's bring in our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, and we saw his piece a little earlier in the programme. Stuart, as I was saying, we saw your incredibly powerful and horrifying piece, and it really is just a snapshot of what Alex Rossi was just saying in his piece, the complexities of this nation and the fact that this revolution is not tied to one rebel group, and the situation here could actually get even more dangerous once people are over the celebration and the jubilation that Assad is gone.
Yeah, I think Alex is absolutely right in what he was saying there and pointing out. So in many ways, you've got two paths taking place at the moment. One is very much the civil one. This is the families trying to find their loved ones, if they're alive, but more often than not, they're trying to find the bodies of those who have been murdered by the regime. That is what those people, and there's thousands upon thousands of them, are focusing on. But then, of course, you then have the political element. What is going to happen in the future? How is the government going to be formed? What will it look like? Can the country be united? And then, of course, you've got Israel making its moves. You've got the various divisions that are in play. And we've got a sort of government that's trying to form itself, but at its core, a jihadi group. So the country is really on the edge at the moment. It's only 72 hours old that this revolution has taken place, but it was already divided. We're a long way from this becoming a peaceful and successful revolution, a very long way indeed.
Well, Stuart, thanks so much for all of your reporting this evening. Now, back in the UK, speaking to Sky News, the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has defended pausing thousands of Syrian asylum claims. One man who was waiting for a decision on whether he could stay told us that just because Assad is gone doesn't mean Syria is safe. Sky's Communities correspondent Becky Johnson reports.
We are in a very dark reality in Syria. Assad left Syria as a demolished country.
From his home in Manchester, Hassam has watched the downfall of a regime he says attacked him as a young human rights activist in Syria.
I have been targeted by barrel bombs, which caused me serious injuries in my legs.
He fled first to Jordan, then Turkey, arriving in the UK with his wife and child on a student visa last year.
We applied for many visas as students, and we granted a visa for the UK.
Within weeks of getting here, they claimed asylum, but 15 months on was still waiting for a decision when the government paused all applications from Syrians.
Some people would say you fled Syria because of the Assad regime. That regime has now fallen. Why don't you go back?
It is not ended by Bashar al-Assad leaving Syria, because all the officers, all the soldiers, all the security officers that have been controlling the country, all the Ba'ath Party who was controlling the party were still, and still now, fully functioned and fully armed. I don't think that they will just turn into a peaceful angels.
With his visa due to expire, his right to work and rent will end next month. And without an answer from the Home Office, he fears for his family.
I don't know if I was able to look at my kid's eye and told them that we are homeless now.
The government estimates he's among around 6,500 Syrians waiting on asylum decisions, but has defended pausing claims.
People were claiming asylum from the Assad regime, which is no longer there. So that's why it's right, like France and Germany, for us to suspend those asylum decisions. But we also need to closely monitor what is happening in Syria, because there's so much instability. We don't know yet how that will play out.
The UK has taken in tens of thousands of Syrians since the civil war began, but their need for asylum here is now being questioned.
Can you ever see a point where you would feel that you do want to return to Syria?
Yes, of course. If we have a free country where I freely can express my opinion, I will do my work, or I will do my best to get back to there.
But until then, with asylum applications halted, they and many others may not have the option of remaining in Britain. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Manchester.
Well, this is a nation that is very much traumatised. It's emerging from a 14-year civil war, but also from a more than 50-year Assad brutal regime and rule over this country. We've seen in tonight's reporting the sort of torture and killing of so many people. And as this nation suddenly takes a deep breath of relief because Bashar al-Assad is gone, they're also grappling with the realities that this is also a country that has had foreign powers meddling in its affairs for the last 14 years. So we'll have to wait and see how this country emerges. It is only 72 hours since that revolution really took off, and Bashar al-Assad and his family fled this country. So we'll have to wait and see how this country emerges. But for now, back to you, Anna, in the studio.
Yalda, thank you very much indeed. The man accused of gunning down American health executive Brian Thompson in New York has again been denied bail. 26-year-old Luigi Mangione shouted towards journalists as he was led into court in Pennsylvania.
Luigi, do it. And completely out of touch. And it's not the intelligence of the American people. It's a lived experience.
Well, our US correspondent Mark Stone joins us now, expecting to hear soon from Mangione's attorney, Mark. But your assessment of that tussle and shout-out as he went into court?
Yes, another extraordinary twist in a quite remarkable story, which began, of course, in Manhattan last week with that extraordinary assassination of one of America's top, the CEO of one of America's top healthcare insurance firms. He went into court, Luigi Mangione went into court, and as you saw, appeared to say it is completely out of touch and an insult to the intelligence of the American people, as he was tussled by officers into the courtroom in Pennsylvania for his extradition hearing, an extradition hearing that needs to take place because of the different legal jurisdictions of different states here. He was arrested, of course, yesterday in Pennsylvania at that McDonald's, but it is the NYPD, the New York Police Department, that wants to get hold of him to be able to question him. They are leading this investigation, and he is fighting his extradition, and so he will not immediately go to New York. That will prolong the legal proceedings. That was the outcome of the court case, the court hearing that happened after the tussle that you just saw there. Another development is that officers are still trying to determine the details of the gun that was found on his person, which they believe to be the same gun that was used in the shooting last week. They've described it as a ghost gun, which is a gun that can either be printed on a 3D printer or the component parts can be printed and then it can be put together. What they don't yet know is whether or not this gun was put together, made by him, or whether he perhaps bought it from someone else. So accomplices, maybe. They don't know about that. An awful lot they need to gather, and at the moment, he is not cooperating with them.
We'll keep an eye on that case, of course. Mark, thank you. The Health Secretary has insisted that social care is a priority for the government, despite it not being in the Prime Minister's new list of priorities. Sky News has spoken to Ben, who is demanding answers after his brother Simon, who is autistic, was able to wander away from his carer. Sky's People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin has this special investigation about a system at breaking point.
Hang on. I'm going to look right.
Simon is autistic and needs constant supervision.
Oh, bigger brother. Yeah. He's not aware of danger. He's not aware of things that might harm him. Oh, no. Oh, see, he just goes in and out. It's very easy for him to get lost and get into some trouble.
In May, Simon was taken into town by his carer, but the carer left him alone in a coffee shop while he went to the toilet, and Simon wandered off. The carer called Ben in a panic.
Hello? Hello, Ben. Yeah. I have an issue now. What happened? I went to the loo in the Starbucks. I asked them to sit down, to wait for them coming. When I got out, I didn't see him. I've searched everywhere now. You went to the bathroom? Okay. He left? Yes.
When he was lost, if you can see through his eyes, it was sensory overload. The council and the social workers apologized. She said, "Oh, we're sorry, we'll have to do a safeguarding review." I said, "Please do the safeguarding review as soon as possible." She has been radio silent ever since.
The carer was supplied by a company called Hartwig Care. They refused to comment on the incident, but said safety of clients was paramount. While Camden Council, who paid for the service, told us, "We would like to apologise to the resident and their family for the distress that this incident caused. Following this happening, we immediately began a safeguarding review with Hartwig to understand exactly what had happened and what they would do to ensure an incident like this does not happen in the future."
How has this made you feel about the quality of care that was offered to you?
It just speaks to the greater issue about care in this country. Leave the lunch here for you.
Social care is at breaking point. 81% of councils, including Camden, say they expect to overspend on their adult social care budgets this year, while half of home care providers say they simply can't meet demand. And complaints about adult social care have risen by a fifth since 2013. All of these pressures can affect the quality of care. The government is promising vital social care reform, but we don't know when that will happen or how much it will cost.
When we won the general election on the 4th of July, we inherited the worst fiscal environment since the Second World War. And so action had to be taken to get the public finances onto a stable footing.
This government doesn't have the money to pull off what you've just told those people, does it?
Look,
there is no money to match the ambition, is it? We're going to level with people.
We are fixing the finances. Until we fixed the public finances, we are not going to be in a position to invest properly in our public services. So we've got to take it one step at a time.
Terrific. You know, I was worried about you last time.
Ben's brother's case was investigated, but he hasn't set eyes on the final report. And Camden Council told us it wasn't published online because the incident wasn't serious enough.
You're only one family emergency away from being a carer. Until you're in it, you can't really relate to it. But once you're in it, you'll understand.
Ben is now caring for his brother full-time again. He says his faith in the care system has been shaken so much that for now, they've opted to go it alone. Nick Martin, Sky News.
Northumbria police say they believe former England rugby player Tom Voice has died while trying to drive across a swollen river. The 43-year-old is thought to have attempted to cross Aberwick Ford in Northumberland during the weekend. His car has been found, but he is still missing. Mr Voice won 9 caps for England during his career and spent 6 years at Wasps. Now, it features a stadium so outlandish that it sits on top of a cliff. And tomorrow, the Saudi Arabia World Cup bid will hit the back of the net when FIFA confirms it will host the 2034 World Cup. The $1.5 trillion mega project has been under the spotlight due to Saudi Arabia's human rights record and working conditions. Our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, has a closer look.
Football has never seen a stadium on this scale before. This the centrepiece of the $1.5 trillion neon mega project, 350 metres above the ground in the desert.
Imagine a traditional city and consolidating its footprint.
No limits on ambition or spending to bring the World Cup to Saudi Arabia in 2034. And no need to win a bidding contest.
80% of our people follow football and they love football. So this is an investment that's going into growing the game for Saudi Arabia for a game they love. It's a fantastic occasion that we can serve a FIFA World Cup, but ultimately this is serving our football need number one.
Confirmation will come tomorrow at a virtual FIFA Congress. FIFA's president Gianni Infantino here in a Saudi promotional video, accused of rolling back on reforms, engineering a process to deliver the kingdom its biggest sporting prize.
Football is not about sports. It's about money,
power, influence. This is really the big sham that we're seeing, but frankly, they don't care. They're clearly going against their own rules, and to make sure that nobody contests them, they manipulate the process.
But this is everything the Saudis have been working towards, convincing Cristiano Ronaldo, Karim Benzema and Neymar to join their league, showing they're a very different proposition to Qatar, with a longer established football fan culture, as the boss of Saudi's most successful team explained to me.
If we look back and talk about the Qatar World Cup, even with so much criticism, I think there's general consensus that it was ultimately a very successful World Cup, right? In our case, I'm sure it's going to be the same, and again, with a proper size country, with passionate fans.
Al Hilal will move into one of the 15 stadiums being built ahead of the World Cup. Vast infrastructure projects requiring a vast migrant workforce, already estimated to exceed 13 million. FIFA's inspection report did express concerns about indecent working conditions and found gaps complying with international standards that contradict Islamic law. There are assurances fans will face no discrimination, but anti-LGBTQ+ laws remain. And while FIFA hopes the World Cup is a catalyst for change, there are limits to how much Saudi Arabia can change or needs to change for FIFA. Rob Harris, Sky News.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined by the broadcaster and commentator Ali Miraj and the political journalist Zoe Grunewald. Welcome to both of you. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Eye, the headline, new turmoil in the Middle East as neighbours launch attacks inside Syria. A fascinating unfolding of events, obviously. That and more after the break.
of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news. Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, a reminder of our top stories this evening. Sky News has witnessed families searching through body bags in Syria for people murdered by Assad's regime. The rebel leader, Abu Muhammad al-Julani, has told Sky News that Western fears about him and his movements are unnecessary, as he is committed to rebuilding Syria. And the New York shooting suspect, Luigi Mangione, has shouted as he was led into his latest court appearance, charged with the murder of a healthcare executive. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the broadcaster and commentator, Ali Miraj, and the political journalist, Zoe Grudeveld. Welcome and great to see both of you. So to the front pages then, let's take a look, shall we? Starting with the Eye, it leads on what it calls new turmoil in the Middle East, reporting on Israel and Turkey's airstrikes on Syria. That story also on the front page of The Guardian. Their headline, Israel strikes military targets and seizes territory in Syria offensive. Meanwhile, The Times carries words from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who says the attack is vital for his country's security, but has ruled out a march on Damascus. Hunting Assad's torture squads, that is the Mirror's headline, who say rebels in Syria are drawing up a hit list of ousted Bashar al-Assad murderous torture squads. On the front of the Express, a tribute to the only UK diplomat to be killed on public service, Rebecca Dykes, after her mother was presented with the new Elizabeth Emblem Honour by King Charles. The Daily Mail leads on medical misogyny in the NHS after a report revealed women are enduring painful gynecological conditions, with doctors often dismissive of patients' pain. The Metro reporting that the alleged New York assassin was found with a 3D printed pistol, which couldn't be traced by authorities because it was homemade. The Telegraph's lead story, how new prisons will be forced through the planning process by Angela Rayner under powers that allow objections of towns and villages to be overturned. The FT has an in-depth piece explaining why so-called structured finance transactions are proving so popular in America. The Sun claims that model Kate Moss has split from her boyfriend of 9 years. And The Star has harsh words for the boss of Thames Water, who's defended senior figures at his firm after they shared £770,000 in bonuses. A quick reminder, don't forget to scan the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, and you can check out those front pages while you listen to our guests. So let's head to Ali and to Zoe. Welcome to both of you. You know, what's happening in Syria is truly extraordinary. So too, what Israel and Turkey are doing in terms of strikes, strategic strikes, opportunistic, one might say, Zoe. So what is The Guardian reporting for the paper?
Yes, so The Guardian is talking about Israel's incursion into Syria, particularly it's intensifying its offensive, so it's striking military targets across the country. It says it's keen to destroy the strategic capabilities that threaten the state of Israel, so this is weaponry. They're talking about also the Navy specifically as well. But of course, this is causing concern across other parts of the Middle East. So there are plenty of states, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, who have warned against this kind of action from Israel, saying it could unsettle Syria when it's already in a very destabilised and particularly precarious part of its history. And of course, Netanyahu has taken this opportunity, as you say, to try and destroy some of those military capabilities within the region. But there are concerns about what this will do and whether this will trigger a much wider conflict. You know, the region is really on the precipice now. You know, we are seeing that the West is being very, very careful in its wording about what it wants next. You know, there was talk today, Pat McFadden, a cabinet minister, about potentially reviewing their prescription of some of the rebel groups that have tightened their hold on the region. So while the West is acting like this, Israel is, really, really going in and trying to strengthen its position there. And it just makes this whole situation much more precarious.
Well, indeed, the British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights suggests that since the fall of Assad's government, Israel's Air Force has carried out more than 300 airstrikes against research centres, arms depots and military infrastructure across Syria, as well as a naval base, which is on the front page of the Times, and in fact the FT, which we'll come to in a minute. Extraordinary photograph there on the front page of the Times, Ali.
Yes, look, they're attacking Latakia base. They've taken out a number of vessels there, but also they are attacking strategic strongholds of weapons, particularly chemical weapons. Now, Israel Katz, the Israeli defense minister, is saying the pretext for doing this is that they can't afford to wait like people in the West can for what might happen in Syria. This is an unstable situation. There are not just one rebel group here where everyone's getting excited about al-Jilani, but there are many other groups involved in this. The Turks are supporting the Syrian army, because they're worried about the Kurdish threat. The Israelis are worried about weapons falling into the wrong hands. And this is the first time that Israel, since the Yom Kippur War now, is going into Syrian territory on the side of the line in the Golan Heights and potentially further. Now, they're saying they're not marching to Damascus.
But they're not far off, though, are they?
Well,
Israeli troops, again, according to the Monitor, suggesting they were 15 miles southwest of Damascus. That's not our beef, is what they effectively said today, did they not? But anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No. They're saying it's not. But then the Turks are coming out and saying, well, look, this is a typical acquisition approach by Israel. And we know that there are some hardliners in Netanyahu's government who would quite like to take some Syrian territory. And let's not forget that Benjamin Netanyahu's just started his corruption trial today as well. So it's not unhelpful.
Suggesting this is diversionary.
Would I ever suggest such a thing? But not unhelpful timing.
OK, fascinating, but, really extraordinary pictures there. Israel blitzes arms silos and sinks navy in Syria, the front page there of the Times. We have no intention of interfering in Syria's internal affairs, but we clearly intend to do what is necessary to ensure our security, said Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, today. Turkey, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates were among those who condemned Israel's actions. But what it means for the whole, just sticking on Israel's actions, you've got a weakened Hezbollah, a weakened Hamas, you might argue a weakened Iran because it's losing its proxies. In a sense, this has been a recent win-win for Israel, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think they see this as an opportunity to really strengthen their capabilities in the region and try and prevent, that weaponry, that particular force that was in Syria from being another threat to Israel. Israel feels very cornered in the region. But I think there is increasing concern internationally about Israel and the ramping up of its behaviour in this conflict. And I think there are worries now, with Western neighbours and Western allies to Israel, that doing so destabilises the region even more and makes it very, very difficult. Everyone's looking to Trump presidency in January and what that will mean for the region. We know that Trump is very pro-Israel, but actually isn't very interested in getting the US involved in any wars or any conflicts. So while Israel might feel bolstered by the prospect of Trump coming in and supporting them, there is also a question about what this means for wider conflict in the area. And of course, as you say, there's Russia, there's Iran. Trump isn't interested in getting into any conflict with these parties. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. And we already can see that the language coming specifically out of the government here is that, they want the Syrian people to have a government that is chosen by them, and they are looking to potentially, reviewing their prescription of certain groups and wanting to have a constructive working relationship with the group that do form the government, depending on what that may be. So it is difficult for Israel. It's not necessarily the case that they have all their allies behind them.
It's going to be really difficult, though, following on from what you just said, Zoe, to have a situation where the Syrian people can really determine their own future when there are so many outside parties, right? So you not only have the neighbouring states, of which there are 5, all with their own interests around this, Turkey, Iraq, Jordan, Israel and Lebanon, but you also have Russia that's got a strategic port there at Tartus, which which is very important for Russia because it has missiles there and other weaponry to be able to attack NATO states if it should ever want to do such a thing. So this is all very
fly to
fraught.
Central Africa, which is another key strategic.
Well, indeed, but exactly they could do that, but obviously this is a very strategically important base for the Russians, and the Turks as well feel that they are on the march, and they've done quite well.
Well, let's look at the eye in the context of Turkey then. New turmoil in the Middle East as neighbours launch attacks inside Syria. Turkey's intelligence agency destroying 12 trucks loaded with missiles and heavy weapons. 2 tanks, ammunition stores as well, being transported by the Kurdish YPG militia in northeast Syria. It was something that was witnessed by Sky News' Alex Rossi and his team in Kamishli in northeast Syria, because there's no love lost between the Turks and the Kurds, who, with this instability, will continue presumably to demand or wish for their own homeland.
That's
so
right.
this is another stress point, isn't it?
At all costs, the Turks do not want any separatist movement going on with the Kurds in their country, and they are going to do whatever they can. And given the fact that the Assad regime just fell over in the space of 4 days, and that we know why, because it was a proxy of Iran and Russia. Both are distracted with their own issues. And so it showed that it was very, very hollow, and they were not going to come to its rescue. They've got their own issues to deal with. Turkey's actually done quite well out of this, and they will be trying to do everything they can. So this is the danger here. When everyone gets getting excited about some unified rebel alliance, it's not unified.
This is the Turkey bombing Kurdish weaponry in Kamishli that we're looking at there, and Alex Rossi's seeing, live ammo still on the ground, and mortars and everything. So anyway, I
do worry about this. People getting a little bit too sanguine about the fact that Al-Jilani's come and he's walking around and he's like the new superstar. It's only been 5 minutes, and this is a very complicated situation with multiple rebel groups with their own interests being backed by outside forces. So we're just going to have to wait and see. It could be very messy, very protracted. The last thing that the people of Syria want is another protracted civil war going on. But I think we should just be mindful about where we are.
Different religious influences as well, obviously, which is critical to that region. The Financial Times, again, showing that airstrike on the dock at the port city of Latakia, but saying that the UN has now started to warn Israel that this will hurt the transition. This is the sort of instability point you talked about already.
Absolutely. And, it's not the UN, but also these other states in the Middle East as well have been voicing their concern. And, as we've said repeatedly, it's a very precarious time for the region. But also, Syrians within it, they want to see the peaceful transition of a government. And when there are many states, Israel included, intervening or have their own agenda at play, it makes it very, very difficult. I think, there are lots of images now that we're seeing of particularly the action that Israel has taken and the destruction there. But when you also look at what we are now seeing coming out of Syria as a result of Assad's departure, the scenes of the morgues, the prisons, it's just so much destruction in this region. And it would be great to think that now that regime has fallen, we might start to see peace. But, as Ali said, there are so many interested, conflicting parties that it becomes deeply complicated.
And who pays for the rebuild? Gaza, Lebanon,
absolutely.
now Syria. It's such a mammoth task ahead, isn't it? Lots more still to come in the next part of our programme, including the Deputy Prime Minister wants to allow prisons to be built on Greenbelt lands, even if councils voice their objection. Discussing that next.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States.
It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths, the fighting between the gangs. is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change.
We're being crushed. Free from wherever you get your news.
We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine.
The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, Ali Miraj and Zoe Grunewald. Let's go to planning, shall we? 2 stories, 2 papers. Daily Telegraph on prisons and The Times. Rayner clears a greenbelt the size of Surrey for housing. Ali, why don't you pick up on this one then?
Well, look, housing, we know that there's a housing problem in the country. We haven't been building enough houses since Harold Macmillan in this country. So it is a problem. So many people can't get onto the housing ladder. We know that in our country, it's something culturally deeply embedded within us that we want to own our own home, and that's all to be applauded. The thing is this. If you go back to why Greenbelt was established in the first place, it was there to prevent ribbon development. It was there to prevent urban sprawl. Mm-hmm. There was a reason behind it. When these guys, before the Labour Party came to government, they were saying that they were going to tinker around what they call grey belt, disused petrol stations and car parks. Now we find very quickly this is expanding out. They want to be on the side of the builders, not the blockers. They want to talk about local plans in an area. If you've got a local plan, not every council has a local plan, but council should consult with their publics to have local plans, and then you just bypass local council planning committees, which are representatives of people who have elected them to do that job of scrutinising planning applications.
But the Tories found that actually the top-down housing targets, the councils had to put it in, and that the developers benefited and the councils did and the people did not. And Chesham and Amersham by-election, for example, they were punished. So there is punishment to come after this.
And you need infrastructure as well with this. And no one wants to talk about immigration. 906,000 people coming here to the year June 23.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Daily Mail front page, though, if you don't mind, which is another indication of an NHS in stress, but specifically for women left in medical agony, as it says.
Yes, so this is a report that, I mean, it probably won't come as a surprise to most women hearing this, actually. Doctors have a poor understanding of women's health, meaning they fail to recognise symptoms and are dismissive of patients' pain. And they talk about this particularly within the realms of gynecological conditions, so things such as heavy periods, endometriosis, endometriosis. And they talk about how people suffer with discomfort because they don't have the right language, doctors don't have the right language, and they tend to minimise women's pain as well. And I think this is something we've been talking a lot about recently. You know, there was that big report that Sky did and other publications did into maternity wards and how women's pain was often dismissed there and they weren't getting good quality care. I think often when the NHS or healthcare services are in crisis, it is more vulnerable groups who don't necessarily always have the language or the recognition, who are often victim of things like this, where doctors don't have the time, they don't have the training, and therefore people, you know, experience poor medical care. And, you know, half the population have to go through gynecological procedures, they have to deal with this. So it's a real wonder why we are still talking about this in this day and age when we know that women have been discussing these problems for a long time.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice for the Daily Mail to lead on that, isn't it? And just very quickly, I'm going to read it out loud because we're running out of time. It's the Metro. More than half of young drivers admit to illegal phone use behind the wheel, according to a survey. Illegal phone use is rising, according to the RAC. We'll talk about that next time, shall we? Ali Miraj, Zoe Grunewald, lovely to see you both. Thank you. See you for more in the 11. Here is the weather. Well, high pressure will keep things fairly settled this week, if cold, but for some there will be a lot of cloud around. England and Wales will have a rather cloudy and breezy start tomorrow. Drizzly outbreaks in the south. Elsewhere, a widespread sharp frost under clear skies, some freezing fog patches. That fog slow to lift through the morning, lingering in some places where it'll stay close to freezing. Some sunshine, though, best across Scotland. Southern Britain will be grey and breezy again. Drizzly rain possible in the far south. Shetland, dull and damp, in case you live there. Well, our press preview continues in Sky News at 11. Syrians tell of their search for loved ones snatched during decades of dictatorship after the fall of Bashar al-Assad.